Awesome. Thanks, Amari.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and jump in the presentation, just covering a really high level SEO approach today. If you have any questions if you have any questions during the presentation, just shout them out. And afterward, if you want to dive deeper or you have any follow-up questions, feel free to message me or email me, and I will be happy to talk with you some more or give you some links you can use to pursue it even further. All right, so I'm going to bring up my screen here, just a minute. All right, can y'all see PowerPoint now? Yep, okay, great. All right, so just to go over some basics here. Hold on a second, I'm sorry. My screens are getting all wonky. Are you able to see the whole screen, or do you see like a black screen with the deck in the middle of it? I can't see you anymore, so if someone can say what they can see, that would be helpful.
We see our next slide as well. We see the main slide and the next slide as well. So we don't.
You see the next slide as well? Okay.
Yeah. So you are not in full present. You are in presenter mode.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I have to stop presenting here and switch screens. Sorry, it's technical difficulties, of course.
We're all experienced with those, so don't worry about it.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Now you should be, oh my gosh, it's doing it again. Okay, you know what? We're just going to go through it like this. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so as I said, my name is Emily. I am in the greater Boston area. I have been working in SEO since about 2010. I've covered a lot of different areas in SEO. I've been, I worked in-house on e-commerce sites, doing a lot of shopping optimization. I've done some local SEO work. I've done on-page, off-page, and we'll talk about what all that means in a minute. So if that doesn't sound familiar, no worries. Today, I primarily focus on SEO from a content perspective. So I work with other small agencies and independent, web developers, graphic designers, web designers, etc., as well as larger companies, typically software companies, helping them develop a strategy for how to get more traffic to their website, how to get more leads, all through the use of content on their site. So at its core, SEO, search engine optimization, is just the effort of bringing people to your site organically. And what that means is you're not spending money on ads. So when you do a Google search, you're going to see at the top, there's always some paid ads. Those are pay-per-click ads. Whenever you see those, the person who's running that ad is paying every time someone clicks on it. So it's a pretty reliable way of appearing in Google search results, but it costs money. And sometimes it costs a lot of money over time. And the minute you stop paying, that traffic stops coming. So conversely, organic SEO, which is what I do, is where you're working on creating something, whether it's a blog post, a well-placed link, a video, an image, that's going to show up in search results, and people are going to click on it, and you're not going to pay when they do. So there's an upfront investment, but over time, it becomes a really high ROI piece because you pay for it once, and then you just have it to use as a tool. So there's a few types of SEO. We've got off-page SEO. So when you hear someone talk about off-page SEO, they're talking about getting people to link to their website. So if I wanted to do off-page SEO, I may try to get interviews with news outlets and get links back to my website. I might, go to Tina and say, hey, Tina, can I write a guest post for your blog? And then you'll put a link on it. And then when people come to your blog, they'll see, oh, hey, I liked what she had to say, so I'm going to click. And go through and look at her website. And then we have on-page SEO. And this goes hand in hand with off-page SEO. On-page SEO is where you're actually focused on doing something to your own website that's going to make search engines view you as a valuable resource. Because the whole point is you want a search engine to view you as something good that they should show to people when someone types a query into Google. So whereas with off-page SEO, I might be saying, hey, Tina, give me a link on your site. On-page SEO, I'm going to just look at my own website and think, okay, what questions can I answer that my customers might have? And then I'm going to make a landing page about it. I'm going to write a blog post about it. It's all things I'm doing on my site to try and improve it. Local SEO is a tactic used primarily by stores, restaurants, other retail establishments, where they're looking to show up in not only search results, but mapping applications. Like when you go into Google Maps, Apple Maps, Yelp, anything that has a map that pulls up and you type in, best sushi restaurant near me, those restaurants that show up, a lot of them have engaged in local SEO so that they are more likely to appear when you search for it. Now, there's other factors that go into that are out of their control. Like if you have a really terrible product at your restaurant and people leave you terrible reviews, well, it's hard to overcome that. But there are steps they can take to make it more likely that they'll show up when people within a given geographic radius search for them. And then there's also platform-specific SEO. So when I talk about SEO, I'm using what we'll say is more of the old school term for idea of SEO, which is strictly focused on search engines. Sometimes now, SEO conversations do expand to talk about, say, TikTok or YouTube, because those are both platforms that a lot of people choose to use in lieu, like instead of search. There's a lot of people, especially, folks who are right now teenagers or in their early 20s, who are turning to TikTok for, search queries. Like they have a question, they just go to TikTok because they want to watch a video on it rather than read a blog post. For the purposes of this talk that we're having today, I'm going to refer to that as platform-specific SEO, so I would call that YouTube SEO or TikTok SEO. When we're talking about SEO today, we're talking about things that show up in search engine results, Google, Bing, etc. And if I'm going too fast at any point, please let me know. I sometimes I can really start to rattle on. So some terms that are good to know that will come up throughout our talk today are SERPs. And that stands for search engine results pages. That's just an acronym that refers to the page of results that you see when you make a Google search. So when someone says they want to be at the top of the SERPs, they want to be one of the first results that you see when someone does a search. Keyword difficulty, that refers to how tricky it will be to get your website to show up when someone searches for a relevant term on Google. So let's say I owned a shoe store. If I thought, okay, well, I want people to see my store when they search for the word shoes, that would have a very, very high keyword difficulty. Shoes is a very broad, kind of vague term. There's lots of different kinds of shoes, and there's high competition. If I have a small local shoe store, well, when people search shoes, they're going to see Nike, Adidas, Famous Footwear, the shoe department, New Balance, all kinds of big national companies. So it's going to be hard for me as a person with maybe a small website and a small business to rank for that particular keyword. That would have a high keyword difficulty. However, if I said, okay, my shoe store very specifically sells women's hiking boots, and I'm located in Boston, I could say, all right, let's try to optimize for the term women's hiking boots or women's hiking boots in Boston. And then it would be easier for me to appear for those search terms because they have a lower difficulty. Places like Adidas and New Balance, and they don't make hiking boots, but you get the idea. They're not going to be optimizing for those very specific, maybe local terms that I would be trying to get my shop to show up for. Search intent goes along with thinking about funnel stages. So I know a lot of you are involved in marketing, but if you're familiar with the funnel stage, it's where are people in their journey to finding information or working with you or purchasing a product. So, if they're just searching for general information, they're at the top of the funnel. If they're ready to make a purchase, they're probably at the bottom of the funnel. So search intent goes along with that. It's what are they looking for when they're searching? Are they looking for informational content? If they're searching about gardening, are they looking just to learn about gardening and gardening techniques? Is it navigational? Maybe they're searching for a garden center near their house where they can actually go buy plants. They want someone to guide them to where they should go shop, get the directions. Or is it transactional? Are they ready to purchase gardening tools? Are they looking for a shop that sells gardening equipment? So those are the three main ways we look at how someone might be searching. And then we try to come up with content and get links that will align with that. And lastly, another important term to know is schema. This is a type of annotation that goes into the code on a web page, and it sort of acts as a map, if you will, to help search engines better understand what is on the page. Now, you can have your website rank without adding schema tags to your page, but it can be helpful, especially if you have a lot of information on your site, like if you're working for a really big site. Adding these tags helps search engines understand, okay, here's what I'm looking at. This is a recipe. This is an FAQ section, sort of a navigational aid. And we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on. So in general, how SEO works, there's three parts to it. You have your keywords and your content. What is on your site? What is it about? You have your sitemaps and your crawlers. That's like Google has its little crawlers that go out and they'll index your website. They'll look at all of its pages. They'll look to see what sites you link to, what sites link to you. So it's a matter of having a good structure to your site, making sure that you're sharing links with other good sites. So like, I could link to Tina or Omari's site and they could link to me. And those would be good connections because we have things in common with what we do. We might potentially work together on projects. If I just put a bunch of links to, I don't know, a bunch of movie theaters on my webpage, that really wouldn't make sense and wouldn't have any value because I'm not a movie theater and I don't do anything related to movie theaters. It wouldn't make sense for my business and that would have no value. So it's all about how relevant it is. And finally, it's the search engine results pages themselves. It's about how you appear in the search engine results pages and the different ways you can appear in there. And you have a few different avenues you can take to show up in search, which we'll talk about as we go. But there's more than one way to do it. So it's actually possible for one website to hold multiple top spots on a search engine results page, which is possibly unnecessary and not super common, but it could be done. You have a lot of options. So keywords and content. When we talk about content, it includes both blog posts as well as landing pages. Even if you have a one-page website, just a home page with some information about you and your services, there is still value in thinking about keywords and how people might search for you online. So there's a few different kinds of keywords. We have short tail keywords, which are, like I mentioned in the example, shoes. Shoes will be a short tail keyword. It actually doesn't have to do with how many words it is. It just so happens that shoes is only one word, but it's something that's kind of vague and really broad and probably has a lot of competition. Even the term like breakfast restaurants it's two words, but it would be a short tail keyword because there's a lot of restaurants out there that serve breakfast. So there's a big sea of information to wade through. And unless you already have a really big established national brand name that you're working with, you're probably going to need to get a little more specific to start in order to really connect with the people who are your ideal customers and clients. And that's where we start looking at long tail keywords. Long tail keywords are really specific, and sometimes they might be more aligned with people who are ready to, at the bottom of the funnel, they're ready to make a purchase. They're ready to sign sign a contract to work with you. But that's not always the case. You can look at all kinds of different keywords. You could look at informational keywords. You could look at sales pages. There's a lot you can do here. But basically what it is, a long tail keyword is going to have lower search competition and a lower keyword difficulty, as we talked about. So again, going back to our shoes example, where shoes is the long tail keyword, if I say I have a women's hiking boot store in Boston, That's a long tail keyword. I'm going to be getting closer to connecting with people in my area who want to buy from me. In my own business, this comes into play. So I, work as an SEO consultant and a writer. And if I wanted to optimize my site just for the term SEO, it would be extremely difficult, if not impossible, because there's so many people talking about SEO, and there's really big companies and tools out there that, frankly, I just can't compete with in the search engine results pages. But I know that one of my biggest client bases is marketing software tech companies, and that they're looking for specific kinds of articles. So I can use those terms on my website. Like I get hits from people searching for SEO content writing for software as a service, things like that. So get as specific as you can, and that'll help you appear in more search results. And as you appear in more search results, your site gets more value, becomes more valuable in the eyes of Google, and then it becomes easier over time for you to rank for those short tail broad keywords. So you start really specific, and then you grow and you get broader from there. So another thing people talk about when they talk about SEO a lot is they talk about duplicate content. And if you're just doing SEO kind of the first time, this is really important to think about. Duplicate content refers to a web page that is identical and appears in more than one spot. So if I let's say I write a blog post and I put it on my page, and then I decide to publish it as a guest post on a professional colleague's website, I have now just put the exact same content in two places online. And that can become problematic. For SEO to work, you want whatever is on your webpage, whether it's a blog post or a landing page or a sales funnel, you want it to be unique. You want it to be something that only you have on your website or only your client has on their website. Because when you have the same webpage that appears in the same format in more than one place, Google looks at it and they're like, okay, well, this is the same thing. So only one of these is going to rank and one of these is going to get hidden. They don't show it at all. So what happens then is usually whichever website has the, the larger footprint, we'll say, is the one that gets shown in search results, and your other site gets put by the wayside. This happens a lot when people are just starting out and with SEO, and they're like, okay, well, I'm going to publish content on my blog, but no one reads my blog yet. So I'm also going to put my content on LinkedIn or Medium or, this guest post opportunity I have. But they use the same content. That's where we start to see that issue. Because if I publish something on, say, LinkedIn, well, LinkedIn is a much bigger website than my website. So that one might go to the top and mine will go to the bottom. If you're okay with that, that's fine. But it's not something you want to get in the habit of. So ultimately, you want to try and keep your content as unique as possible. If there is an instance where for some reason you absolutely have to have the same content in more than one place, sometimes you'll be able to set the canonical URL, which is you'll be able to say, okay, this is appearing in two places, but only one of them is the original. We're acknowledging that the other one's a duplicate. Publishing on Medium is actually pretty good for this. If you want to publish on another platform, Medium lets you publish something on your own website. And then if you put it on Medium, also, you can add the link to your original website in there, and it will feed that through to search engines. It'll say, hey, we're showing this, but the original is here, so don't devalue that. So if you want to look for tools that let you do that, if you're going to be spreading content around different platforms, because that'll help you get traction and visibility on larger platforms, but also still keep your site from getting hidden in the search results. And the way that gets discovered is through crawling. So search engines have crawl bots. They go out, they look at the internet periodically. They're like, okay, this is how everything connects. This is what seems the most valuable. Here's how we're going to rank it. Crawling doesn't happen every day, but it happens at reasonably regular intervals. So when you make an update to a website, it can take a few days to a week for that to start to get picked up. But then once it does, it'll begin to build traction in the search engine results pages. And there's a few things you can do to help this process along. So first off, you always want to have a good sitemap on your site. So for the folks here who are web designers and developers, I'm sure you already are very familiar with creating sitemaps for your clients. For those of you who aren't in web design and development, if you're building a site for yourself, say through a platform like Squarespace or Wix or Shopify, this is taken care of automatically for you. You don't have to worry about it too much. Those platforms will develop a sitemap for you. And that's like a little introductory roadmap that helps search engines understand how your site's organized and where they should and shouldn't go. Second, you want to use headers on your website. So you want to make sure that whenever you're putting content on a landing page or a blog, that the biggest title across the top, you're not just making it, 36-point font. You actually want to, in your back end of your website, when you're putting the text in, you want to make sure it's set to heading 1. And then any subheads you have below that, make them a heading 2. And what this does is it helps the search engine crawler understand, okay, this is what the page is about, heading 1, and here are the subtopics. Because the search engines aren't reading the pages in the same way that we as humans do, but they do pick up on what those headers are, and it helps them begin to figure out who would get most value out of your site based on the content it contains. And it's also a good idea to be as multimedia as you can on your site. Now, you don't want to get super picture heavy. Like, you don't need to have tons of pictures every few lines, because that just gets very bloated. But it's a good idea to have a nice featured image on every page. Use numbered lists, bulleted lists when you can. If you feel comfortable making video, throw a YouTube video in there. These are all different things that can get noticed and picked up by search engines and can help you appear in not only the regular search engine results pages, but the image tab, the videos tab, or even the featured snippet, which is what sometimes shows up at the very top of a Google search result, where it's like text right there. You don't have to click on anything. You can just read it as it is. They love pulling out like lists, numbered lists. If you ever have an opportunity to put a numbered list on your website, do it. It's very good for SEO. Now, when you appear in search results, the little, like the blue headline you see and the little text underneath, that's called the meta title and description. And once upon a time, that was a very important part of the SEO process. You wanted to write a custom title and a description that was catchy and it would grab someone's eye, because you're like, this is the first chance we can hook them. We want to have an enticing little, come on in and see what we've got. Today, that's not so important. Google now actually just rewrites them at whim. There's no rhyme or reason to it that we're necessarily exposed to. I have written some, if I say so myself, very nice meta titles and descriptions to hopefully entice people to come click on an article I've written, and Google rewrites it. So at this point, that's not really a huge deal. Sometimes if you're reading about SEO, you'll still see people talking about that a lot, but going forward, especially as more AI tools are getting introduced into search, it's not as important. So I would devote most of your energy to whatever's happening on your webpage and figuring out who maybe you can link to and who can link to you to create those good SEO networks, we'll call them, online. And I've shared the slides with Tina and Omari, and so these can go out to you guys afterward. I'm happy to email them to you. But this is just a little chart so you can refer back to it if you want to take a glance at what are some different factors that impact SEO and the kind of, how important they are. A big one that I want to call out is mobile websites. So whatever's on your website needs to be readable on mobile, because that's what search engines look at first. So always make sure that you have a good mobile site, that you're, thinking about those keywords like we talked about, and that you're organizing your site in a manner that makes sense. And since so many of you are in web design and development, I'm sure that'll be second nature to you. So I'm gonna breeze over some of this because I don't want us to run over time. But again, feel free to look over this afterward and let me know if you have any questions. Basically, the 3 things you need to remember about SEO are to keep it human, keep it light, and keep it patient. If you remember those 3 things, that'll really take you far in terms of SEO on your website and your client's site. So the first thing is keep it human. It's very easy to get caught up in thinking about all the nuts and bolts, all the rights and wrongs, the algorithms. Well, Google changes this, Google changes that. What should I do? The thing is, Google changes their algorithms constantly. Like you can see here, they made 3 updates at the end of last year, but then they made 1 the year before that. And those are just the ones we know about. They do other ones. They never even tell us. So if I tried to keep track of everything Google changed between August and December of last year, I would have driven myself batty. I would have been like, I just did this. Now I have to change it again. So what I feel the solution to that is just think about the end user. When you think about it, there's 2 things that drive search engines. 1, money, and 2, money. It's all money. That's really all that they're interested in. And how do they get money? They get money by people using them, because then when people use them to search, companies will pay them for ads. Companies will invest in their tools. So they're really interested in the long run in the end user experience. So whenever you do something, whether it's creating a page on your website or making a video that you're going to put on YouTube, think about what kind of value the person on the receiving end will get out of it. If you focus on that, then you're likely going to weather most of the changes that Google makes, because when they make an algorithm change, they're really looking to eliminate things that aren't valuable to the end user, because when people aren't satisfied, they don't use the product, then people don't feel the need to advertise on the product, and we come back to money. So just think about what you would want and then try to do that. Keep it light. And I don't mean you have to keep your content brief or your website brief, but page speed and usability of a web page, especially on mobile, is very important for SEO. So, there's a lot that goes into technical SEO. If you're working on if you work at a large company, there's a lot that they're going to be doing on the back end to tweak and modify and optimize pages from like a code perspective. But for the average person, average small to medium-sized business, main thing you want to focus on is just keeping your website light. Like, don't put in a ton of unnecessary pages. If you don't need a ton of images, like if you're a photographer, you got to have a lot of images on your site. But like as a writer, I don't need a really image-heavy website. So that taking away images can help me speed up my site and can help improve its usability, which in turn helps the SEO. And finally, patience. SEO can be a frustratingly long game. It can take 6 months to rank a new web page that you've created alongside a competitor for a particular keyword. Sometimes it can happen faster, but 6 months is pretty much the average, and it can go up and down throughout that process. But usually after about 6 months, you'll start to see that your efforts are leveling out and it's becoming a slow but steady upward climb. So just hang in there and be patient. I know that especially if you're offering SEO to clients, sometimes they'll get very frustrated and want to know why it hasn't happened right away. I always reiterate, it's just a long game, but it has a good payoff in the end. So lastly, one question I've been getting asked pretty much on the daily for the past 2 weeks is, what about the AI stuff? We've got ChatGPT. Now Bing search engine is integrating it into ChatGPT. Google's coming out with their own version. A lot of people are asking me like, hey, is this going to make SEO like invalid, irrelevant? Is it going to matter anymore? So I don't have a crystal ball or an inside track at Google, unfortunately. But in general, I would say no. It's not going to change things as we know it. Certainly not. I mean, it's going to change things, but it's not going to totally change search. It's not like we're going to be using Google as we do one day, and then, in 2 months, we're going to wake up and suddenly there's no more Google and we're just talking to an empty box that talks back to us. There's a few ways that this can sort of evolve. I think that over time, the way we think about keywords and the way we search for keywords, maybe even the way we look at getting and sharing links with each other will change, because there will be potentially this AI tool in the mix that presents information in new ways. But the core foundations of SEO, such as having good content on your site, structuring it well, getting and giving links to, other sites that make sense, that's all going to remain. Those foundational building blocks, those have always been the building blocks, and they've remained consistent throughout other algorithm changes. So again, while I can't predict anything, at a top level, everything we've talked about today, I anticipate that remaining true, that being the case going forward. And then again, on the other hand, everyone might hate AI search and it'll all fizzle out, and in a year we'll be like, oh, remember that time we thought robots were going to give us our answers in search? So there's no way to know. But I'd focus on the foundations, and above all else, just really keep thinking about what you as a human would want to see, because regardless of what happens with the bots, it's always going to come back to the human end user. So I know that was a lot of information all at once. Maybe put a little bit, maybe got a little optimistic on how much time I had there. So if you want to go over the slides afterward, you're more than welcome to, and please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can find me online. I am the only person with my name, so if you Google it, I will come up. But there's my website, my email. Feel free to reach out and let me know that you're in the group, and I will be happy to email with you or set up a quick chat so we can talk some more.
That was great. Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure
Thanks.
some of you guys might have some questions. I know I have questions. So I guess I can.
Yeah, hit me.
I can jump in. But so I know what you mentioned about the page titles and meta descriptions was definitely interesting, and so I kind of leading off of that. Do you has there been because a lot of the core of SEO is kind of it seems to be that it always kind of the same, right? But are you seeing a shift have you seen a shift over the past several years, like the meta titles, page titles and meta descriptions? That's a good one, because that's something that I always advise clients to write, and if that's changing, I'd like to know if there's anything else that you noticed that's changed in the way we approach SEO.
That's been the most notable change that I've seen over the past year. And I would still, like, if I were you working with clients on websites, I would still at this point advise people writing them, just because then you know that there's something there to start with. But it's not the kind of thing that I would devote like a ton of time to optimizing anymore, because Google will go in there and rewrite it if they want to. Other things that have changed, I mean, that and also the focus on mobile. So it used to be that Google would look at what was on your desktop version of your website, whatever people would see when they came to your website on their laptop or maybe even their tablet. Now they look at what happens on a smartphone first. So that was a shift, because not every business was putting all of their web pages, putting all of their content, all their pages on their mobile version. Some of them would have a more slimmed down mobile version and a bigger desktop version. But when that switch happened, then suddenly they had a bunch of pages that weren't showing up in Google search results anymore. So those two things were the biggest. I think the next change we'll see is going to be related to the AI tools, if they really do proceed with fully integrating them into search. I think it's going to make some changes to the way we think about how what rank is. Like, maybe instead of trying to reach the first spot or the featured snippet, we'll try to get the AI to pick us as the thing to display. Because like Microsoft Bing, they are attributing the sources that the AI is using. So maybe we'll be optimizing for that. Still too early to see.
Cool. That sounds good. Thanks. Anyone else have questions for Emily?
Nope. I had a quick question. As far as blogs go, do you recommend a certain word count? Do mini blogs help with it? Or, I mean, is there a secret formula to the blogging?
So for SEO purposes on blogs, you want to have at least 500 words. That's pretty much the minimum threshold for what's going to be useful for SEO. Anything smaller than that, not so much. Like, it's okay if you have a landing page that has less than 500 words, because landing pages typically have a lot of like headers and other content. But for a blog, you want to do 500 words. You want to make sure that it has a title, an H1 tag, and you want to make sure that you use subheads throughout it. Doesn't have to be a ton. For 500 words, I might only put 2 subheaders in it, but that'll help search engines understand what the page is about.
Okay, thanks.
So, and you're welcome. I see Justin, you had a question?
Yeah, have you noticed anything with single page applications where if people have something that's built on like React or Angular or any sort of single page application where technically the content doesn't exist until the page is created, and I've read that there's issues with SEO in terms of being able to actually like crawl through those pages and actually categorize them and actually properly assess the SEO. Have you seen anything like that, and like any recommendations on like how to go about doing that if you have a single page application?
Yeah, that's a tricky spot. That is harder at this point for, like you said, for search engines to crawl and index. Now, my clients currently that I'm working with aren't using that structure, so I don't have a ton of firsthand experience with that. But what I would do to start it off is in this situation, when it generates the page content, do you have like, will it use the same URLs? Like, will it always be like / financial institutions, even if the content on the page might change?
Yeah, it'll have the URLs, like the data will be there. I think the issue is like if you have a page that is like blog specific and you have like a section for cooking and then you have another section that is like also selling the cookware, you could essentially, it's crawling maybe a cooking page, but it's not also recognizing, oh, hey, if I go to this other page, there's all this other stuff as well.
Yeah. In that case, I think, there are still some limitations that we can't get around just like on the crawling end. Having a really good sitemap in place will help. Some folks use multiple sitemaps when they have sites with a lot of dynamically generated content. They will have a sitemap for their blog. They'll have a sitemap for specific blog categories. They'll have a sitemap for the main part of the page. So that can help. I've worked on a number of e-commerce sites that were using similar features to generate like guides and featured product pages, and sometimes we just could not get them picked up. So I think that that's something that will become easier over time as more people adopt that. But for right now, I would really turn to the site mapping.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You alluded earlier to platform-specific SEO, and I'm interested in whatever there is to know about the relationship between Google and YouTube. Obviously, both YouTube being a Google property, right? So, is there any special magic between the two that we need to know about in order to get people to go either to YouTube or to a normal website from a normal Google search?
That's a really good question. And no, there's not any particular special magic that needs to happen. If you're interested in driving traffic to, let's say, to both of them, like you want people to visit your YouTube page and your website, then you really just want to focus on creating content for both. A good way that I recommend to doing that is if you're creating a YouTube video, go ahead, put it on YouTube and make sure that there's a transcript available. You can have YouTube transcribe it, I believe, and or you can do a third-party service and upload it because that helps. That's considered like a good usability feature. And it also, even kind of though we can't see it like on the back end, provides additional context to Google as to what's in the video. And then you can take that transcript and you can go over to your website and you can post the transcript with the video on your site, or you can turn the transcript into a blog post with a little editing. And that you don't run into the duplicate content issue with that, because on YouTube it's a video and on your webpage it's text. So I'd put the content in both places in each of those formats, and I'd make sure I have links between them. On the video page, on the description, I'd say, hey, for more information on this topic, visit our blog at URL. And then you can embed that YouTube video over on your blog site as well. Because they are both, Google owns YouTube, they're very good in search at presenting both the video content alongside the text content, or whichever one it thinks is going to be more relevant to that user. Because also when you're logged into Google with your email address, it starts to remember what your preferences are. So if someone is searching for music related content and Google knows from their browsing history that they really like watching video, they're more likely to see your video result. Whereas I, who tends to read more, will probably get the text version.
Great. Okay, thanks. It helps.
You're welcome. Good, I'm glad.
Okay. Cool. Anyone else have any other questions for Emily? I know we're getting close to the top of the hour, so but yeah, I just wanted, if there are any other questions, feel free to fire away. And then I guess Emily, if folks have additional questions, maybe they can send to you. Do you want to leave your information, or yeah, just maybe, I don't know, how should people reach out to you?
I'm going to drop my email, my LinkedIn in the chat here, so you can copy that and reach out to me if you want. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me. I am on Twitter as well, but I don't check it very often, so I'll put that in here, but you'll hear back faster through email or LinkedIn, because I forget about my Twitter sometimes.
Right on.
But yeah, feel free to yep, I'll be happy to chat some more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have one more question for you. That does come up sometimes. Can you recommend a good free SEO keyword search tool? There's one that I use that's kind of free, but it's also limited as to the number of keyword searches you can do. So I don't know if you have any that you like that are free. Because I often have clients that I want to advise, but they don't have accounts that they can use.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it is unfortunate that most keyword research tools are behind a paywall. So there's a tool called Ubersuggest, which is like a freemium. There's a free tier with you can do a number of queries, and then there's a more expansive paid tier. Some people are divided on their like blog content. Like the guy who runs it, his name is Neil Patel. Some people love him, some people hate him. But all in all, their keyword research tool isn't bad for doing preliminary research. There's also a browser extension that I like called Keywords Everywhere. It's not truly free. You do have to buy credits, but it's like, I think it starts at like $10 for a bunch of credits. Like I had it for a year and didn't even use them all. And what it does is when you go into, it's like a Chrome extension. So when you do a search in Google results, you can pull up Keywords Everywhere from the extensions menu, and it'll show you similar keywords, some metrics about the search volume. I find that very useful as well, especially because you see it right on the search page. And lastly, another tool that's nice is called Also Asked. It's got a limited free version. You can only do like 2 or 3 searches a day. But what it does is you put in a search query, and it pulls up this like map of what other people searched for and then related terms to those searches. So it's a really good way to see how topics interconnect. And that's great if you're like, okay, I want to write a whole blog series on X topic. What are people searching for? It shows you how the topics link, and you can basically pull them and just run with it.
Cool. Awesome. Sounds good. Actually, I use 2 of those, but I don't use Also Ask. So I'll recommend that one as well. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, cool. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you're interested in joining us, click the link down below. See you soon.